I got stuff for you.
Holy moly. I need to get some snakes and release them around my house.
But they love eating people. They love eating kids.
These guys are the scientists of the supernatural, lecturers leaving lessons for inquiring laymen. They are applying the scientific method to a world that baffles science. They are the cryptids of the corn.
Every day that you open your mouth,
I know, right?
I'm more convinced that you're abducted by aliens.
No.
And it just stood up. I mean, it just like kept going and going. And she goes, what the?
These are idiots.
I was laughing reading this because I already knew how you would feel.
Idiot. What part of the story fits your balloon?
Well,
This isn't a UFO. But who else has big black wings and red eyes?
Batman.
Well, Mothman.
Oh yeah, Mothman.
Well, everyone, I think we know exactly what it is. So say it all with me. It was the sandhill crane.
Would you try it?
No.
You wouldn't eat it?
No.
Why?
Because they're probably toxic. There'd be a lot of poop in my pants. I've seen a 6-foot alligator go swinging through the air and slam into a tree. Hello, and welcome back to Cryptids of the Corn podcast. I am the great and powerful Mystery.
And I'm Jay Clone, 35.
Meep, meep, boop, boop. And I'm going to let you take it away because for you, time travel, podcast, all that stuff, my voice is still pretty much shot from the Ohio Bigfoot Jamboree.
And I'm large and in charging.
Yeah. So why don't we're joined by...
Okay, we have a special guest joining us today. I've listened to a little bit of his stuff recently, and I very much enjoy it. So he has a very familiar Appalachian drawl that, you know, is splendid to listen to and sounds like a few of our other friends we've had on the show. From the Prometheus Lens podcast, welcome, Justin Brown.
Woo!
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Happy to have you. And before we get rock and rolling, I want you to share your where they can find all your stuff. I just want to say thank you for being patient. I think you got a hold of us I just looked at it. I think it was like March 9th. And then me and Emily went into
Just before
March 12th.
Ronald McDonald House days.
Yeah, so that didn't happen. It's almost a year later. It's closer to the year than it's not.
That's true.
So, Justin, thank you for coming on here. Please tell everybody where they can find your links and all that stuff.
Hey, with the birth of twins, that's an acceptable excuse as any, and congratulations, brother.
Thank you very much.
But yeah, as far as the podcast, we're on all major platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all those fine establishments, social medias. I'm pretty much on all those: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, now X, all those fine places. You just search up Prometheus Lens podcast, you can find my stuff there.
Awesome.
And then once again, everybody, I always do this, but all the links will be below. Justin, you just have to send them to me, and I'll put them they'll be right at the top of the description of this episode.
Sweet, thank you, man.
But
Yeah, Justin, so what are you bringing to the show today? Because, you know, we are Cryptids of the Corn. We do cover all cryptids, all thing cryptids, and beyond. But you bring something special that kind of crosses over the lines into cryptids and, well, beyond, like I said before. So please give us a little introduction of what you're going to talk about today.
Well, today, man, we're just going to talk about a book that I've recently finished and about to send out for publication called The Epic of Esau. And I was talking to you guys, pre-roll, I was never really like a fanatic, deep diving into cryptids and stuff. I knew Bigfoot, I knew Mothman, and I just kind of knew the overall stories, but was not really a die-hard fanatic. I have several friends that are. And this whole investigation and the forming of this book just kind of started as a catty joke between friends. This other podcast that I do on the side with my buddies, we had Trey Smith from God in a Nutshell on there, And he said, "Oh, well, you guys are from East Tennessee. Maybe I'll come up and we'll go Bigfoot hunting sometime." And we was like, "Yeah, man, that'd be awesome." And then it was just like out of nowhere, Genesis 25:25 popped in my head, and that was the birth of Esau. And in that verse, for those that's not familiar, it says Esau come out red, covered in hair from head to toe, like a hairy cloak. And so I just kind of cattily, threw that out there. I'm like, hey, you never know. Esau might have been the first Bigfoot seed. And we just kind of laughed and, joked it off. But it's funny because where I do this show, I bring on guests and we go into different, topics. And with my show, it's, it's the Bible, it's aliens, it's ancient lost civilizations, conspiracy theory, cryptids, just, the gambit of the strange. But where I'm a Christian, I filter that stuff through the Bible because, like Mike Heiser, I have a supernatural worldview of the Bible, and I think all this stuff filters right through and ties in together. So I had Gary Wayne on shortly after that, and we were going to go over the Epic of Gilgamesh. So here I had this, Genesis 25:25 in my head, and we're going through, and I'm studying, and I come across this guy named Enkidu. And he was covered in hair and was a mighty hunter of the field, just like Esau. And I was like, man, this dude sounds just a lot like Esau. And then, I ended up going through the book of Jasher, and there I find Esau and Nimrod have this, the two mighty hunters like the Highlander meet and battle to the death. And it's just like the Epic of Gilgamesh. Once again, it's just, kind of turned on a different spin to it. But as I just started going through, I was like, man, this is a pretty wild character, and I was not taught all this stuff in Sunday school. So as I just started going through, man, I started going through the Targums, the Jewish lore, the book of Jasher, Jubilees, and just all these different books. And all of them have just little pieces of this guy named Esau, but it's all busted up. So I just started gathering puzzle pieces, man. And as I did, it made this really epic story of this guy that you don't hear a whole lot about in your 66 book canon. And that's just how we got here today.
Oh, that's exciting. I really like that you're going to be able to blend, how we view the world as being, creation driven, creationist.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot, and you may not know, but I was a biologist, and I'm also, a staunch Christian. So creationism with science, that's, sorry, once again, losing my voice. So
oh, you're good.
Mr. E normally can talk for about an hour, but but no, I think I think your worldviews and our worldviews are kind of aligning, and that's kind of how we do our show. You describe it. We talk about, and I'll say it on the show that, this is from my worldview. Yeah. I do the research, this is, I mean, how many times I said, I'm a Christian, so that's what I think happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, this is something we also discussed way back in like season 2, 1, I don't know, about Esau, brought him up, but, never knew enough to do it. Like a deep dive.
You've done.
So yeah, this is exciting. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, I tell people, just if you take that description alone and you apply your, modern thinking and your modern vernacular, and you seen something that's big, tall, red, covered in hair from head to toe like a hairy cloak out in the woods, your first instinct would say, this is a Sasquatch, this is Bigfoot.
Right.
And so I started going down through here. So I guess for those that's just not familiar with it, in Genesis chapter 25, starting in verse 22, it says, "The children struggled together within her, so she inquired of the Lord." And it says, "The Lord said, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. And the one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." So, we have to put our minds in the the mindset of the ancient reader and the writers of this text if we're to fully understand it. And in this ancient world, the eldest got the birthright. It was the younger that served the older. So an ancient writer or reader reading this, immediately that would be a red flag. And they'd be like, something's not right here. No, that's backwards.
Right.
So as I go through, I'm going to try my best to point out some of these things that to the ancient reader, this would be wrong and messed up and just completely backwards. So there it says that there was 2 nations and 2 peoples, and one would be stronger than the other. So if we go to Genesis 3, and for those that's familiar with L.A. Marzulli, he always says everything hinges on Genesis 3:15. It goes back to the seed war. And so there in chapter 3 in verse 14, it says, the Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed above all livestock, above all beasts of the field, on your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. So that clearly says that the serpent will have an offspring, and that the woman will have an offspring, and that they will be at enmity with one another. It means that they will fight. So I think when we read that conception of Esau and Jacob, his brother, there's this thing that the Hebrews and the rabbis have, and it's called the law of first mention. So when a word or a phrase is used, they would read these scrolls in the synagogue. So when they would use these words that were mentioned earlier, and it's kind of the same subject matter, it's kind of their way of pointing back to a certain event and making connections. So I think that's what they're trying to do here, is because you have 2 nations, 2 peoples, they're fighting in the womb. And then the very first mention of that is this, what I just read to you here in Genesis 3. But it says that he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So when you go to the birth of these guys, not only does Esau come out red, covered in hair from head to toe like a hairy cloak, his brother comes out, and it says holding his heel. So it's like you have a mirror image of this Genesis 3 cursing of God to this serpent. But for those that's not familiar with Mike Heiser, he is a scholar. He's no longer with us, but he was an expert in Hebrew languages and ancient dead languages and things like that. In his book Unseen Realm, he done a really good job of putting your mindset in that ancient reader and breaking down some of these Hebrew words and stuff. So he said that word serpent is nakash in Hebrew. And just like English, one word can have multiple translations. Mm-hmm. So you have to put the different words into context to see which one fits better. So it can mean serpent, but it can also mean the shining one, or the one who practices divination. So to me, when I read that, after finding that out, I was like, snakes don't talk. Number 2, she wasn't afraid. She didn't act startled that this thing was talking to her. She trusted this thing. She didn't question it. So to me, all those signs point back to this being a heavenly being on God's holy mountain that rebelled against God. But when we have that cursing there, it goes on. Here's where we have the coverings. Because after this, it says that they sowed fig leaves. But in verse 20, it says, the man called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. And the Lord God made for Adam and for his wife garments of skins, and clothed them. So this word cloth in Hebrew is hilbish. He hilbishes their nakedness. And the word for the cloth, or the garments rather, is kanonet. And the majority of the time when this Hebrew word's used in the Bible, it just translates to tunic.
Okay.
And when you get but when you get to Exodus, that's the describing of the priestly garments. And it says in there plainly that these garments were used to hilbish their nakedness. So once again, it's pointing back to this event, and all rabbis to this day trace their lineages and beginnings to Adam, and they say Adam was the first king and priest of all creation. So it's all pointing back to this event. And I'm sorry, hang on a second, my throat's getting scratchy.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry. But so with these garments, when we go to Ezekiel 28, there is this is widely accepted that this was a condemnation to the king of Tyre. But partway through, it changes. It's no longer talking to this earthly king. It's talking to the spiritual entity behind the king pulling the strings. And the majority of people agree that this is talking about Satan.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go through there, I just want to read because it mentions some key things. It says in verse 28:14, "You are an anointed guardian cherub. I placed you on the holy mountain of God. In the midst of the stones of fire you walked. You were blameless in your ways." So this is clearly no longer talking about an earthly ruler. You know, it says you were a guardian cherub and all these things. But then it describes this garment. And it says, "You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. Sardis, topaz, diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, emerald, carbuncle, and crafted in gold was your settings and your engravings. And on the day you were created, they were prepared for you." And then it goes on. It says that that they profaned their sanctuaries, and they were cast from the garden. So my theory that I've kind of come up with, I've just been reading scripture and stuff and laying some groundwork for you, but I'm of the opinion that at the fall, Satan was like the high priest. And it says, you know, that a lot of people theorize that he was the head of the praise and worship team, you know, and he was associated with music. And well, clearly, if this Ezekiel 28 is talking about Satan, it says he had a sanctuary because he defiled it. Every precious stone was his covering. And all those stones listed are the same stones that's listed in the priestly ephod when you get into the book of Exodus. And just once again, it says that, you know, he'll bished the priest's nakedness, the same thing that was used for this garment that was given to Adam. So I think once Satan rebelled and he fell, that he was stripped of his priestly position. His garments were taken and was bestowed upon humanity. And that's why they match up so perfectly with the verbiage, how they're described, what they were used for, to hilbish their nakedness. The rabbis pointing their origins back to Adam. This is where it all come from, in my opinion.
So that's a lot of information you were able to pull from the Bible. You jumped around a lot, but made a lot of awesome connections. I want to try to recap, but right at the end there, getting stripped of his. It reminds me of, we just talked about your grandpa in the war, getting stripped of his ranks,
Like,
just
literally,
like
yeah.
for messing up, I guess, or for
Yeah, messing up would probably be the politest way.
Little different.
No, rebelling.
Rebelling. There you go. Yeah.
Same thing Lucifer did.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but don't take this the wrong way. But I feel like I'm sitting here talking to my grandma, because she was so knowledgeable in the Bible, and the way you're sharing it and everything like that, it just reminds me a lot of her.
Yeah.
In the best of ways.
Yeah.
You know, she was one of the few people I know that could read Hebrew and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But did you have more to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to kind of recap, I guess, because you covered a lot of things right there and a lot of different things. So the serpent, you know, because I'm not as familiar. I grew up going to church. I grew up in a Baptist church, and you know,
Same.
Okay, so and I probably about I was about 14. I used to go. You know, we go every Sunday, and till I was about 14 years old, and then that's when my family got involved in another business, and you know, our Sundays were now working. So I stopped going, but I never stopped, believing. But I'm not as knowledgeable. But as I'm getting older now and spending more time with Justin and doing the show, I've come more and more drawn to that, and believing, just like how you're talking and filtering things. And so this is exciting just for me at my point in my life. But like I said, you covered a lot. So I want to try to recap for, I guess, someone like myself that's not as knowledgeable in more layman's terms. But the significance of Esau and the warring of the two nations in the womb, and then what's the word when you're saying like Genesis, the chapter, okay, where you said the two seeds being in the womb, like who is at war? What's the seeds they're referring to? And also, I looked up it's on like BiblesReview.com or something like that, where you can look up the scriptures and different Bibles, and you can see how it's changed from Bible
Different
to Bible.
translations, yeah.
Yeah, and that word, the seed word, is switched around from Bible to Bible. I forget what the other words that I remember reading. But I want to know why that's, in your point of view, why that's what those seeds are referring to, and what that actually means for someone that's listening.
Well, yeah. Well, and I can use this as a good springboard for people like in our circle. You hear people talk about the Nephilim,
mm-hmm.
the Nephilim Giants, and then you hear people talk about reptilian race, and these hybrid races. And with the the supernatural worldview, that's the whole reason why God brought the flood to begin with,
mm-hmm.
because it says that Noah was the only righteous man left. Well, that word righteous in Hebrew, it doesn't mean that he was the sinless man. No, it was talking about his bloodline. That word was tamim. He was tamim, and that same word was used over and over and over again, and it was linked to the sacrificial system, talking about the purity of the blood sacrifices of the animals. So a lot of people want to say, well, your God's a genocidal God. He wipes out entire races and stuff like that. No, he was getting rid of these hybrid beings and these hybrid races,
mm-hmm.
or in the very least knocking it down far enough that his creation, his people, could have a fighting chance.
Cutting the weeds back.
Extirpating.
Yeah. And so that's what this whole narrative of the Bible is about. It's about, this first curse, this first prophecy from God to Satan. He will have a seed, she will have a seed,
mm-hmm.
and they will be at enmity, at war with each other and fighting. And a lot of the parables in your Bible, a lot of these parables have surface level meanings, but Scripture's like an onion. You peel it back, there's multiple layers and multiple mm-hmm. deeper esoteric interpretations. So when you get to the story of the wheat and tares, in that story it says that a landowner had some land and his workers. So this man is God. These workers are the angelic race. It says, and his workers sown seed, or sown good seed. It says, but in the owner's absence, the adversary sneaks into the field and sows his seed. Then the workers see that there's tares growing amongst the wheat. And if you Google those, they look identical side by side. You can't even tell the difference until harvest time.
Mm-hmm.
So the workers ask the landowner, do we rip up the tares? And the landowner says, no, least in derooting them, you also deroot the wheat and hurt the wheat. No, we'll wait till harvest time, and we will separate the wheat and the tares and throw the tares in the fire. So this is God, this is Satan, this is the angelic race. Satan comes in and sows his seed in God's land. And at the end of days, the separating of the wheat and the tares will be thrown into the lake of fire. And then you have the parable of the prodigal son. Yeah, there's a surface level meaning to that, but once again, you dive in deeper. There's a father, God. There's an elder son. That is the angelic race. The book of Job says that the angelic race was there to witness the sight of creation. It says, where were you when I hung the stars? Where were you when I laid its foundations? You know, and all this stuff to Job. And he says, and where were you? He said, when the morning stars, the sons of God, sang for joy at the sight of creation. So it shows you they're there. They're the elder brothers. We are the younger brother. So the younger brother in that parable, he wants his inheritance now. He squanders it all away, you know, rolls into pig excrement, and he's so ashamed he thinks that his father will never take him back. But he's like, I'm going to go and beg just to be a servant. But he comes back home. The father's waiting by the gate for him, welcomes him back with open arms, he cloths him in a robe, puts on a ring of authority. And what happens? The elder brother gets pissed off. He's like, I was here the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I never left you. You've never threw me a party. You've never, done this and done that. That's the story of this seed war. The angelic race, the rebellious ones that were jealous of our Father's love for us. So that's what it is. It's just that's the whole seed war battle. That it's an overall arching theme in the Bible.
Wow. Yeah, that can kind of see that in modern times, not to be like in the conspiratorial world, but, in a sense,
Oh, no, there's evil out there.
There's evil out there, and
it's not hiding
even
anymore.
Like the AI and combining, the humans with technology, and hooking us up to AI in our brain, that Neuralink stuff,
That should be an episode in 2 weeks after this.
Yeah. But I had a question too. So with Esau and Jacob's his brother, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, Jacob and Esau, yeah.
So is one of them good, one of them bad? Or was Esau born first, correct?
Yeah, he was the eldest.
Okay. So yeah, is one like?
And I know
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just about to say, I know some people's like, I thought talking about Esau and this, him possibly being a Bigfoot and stuff like that. Why are we talking about, the garden and these garments and stuff? Because, I'm not going to throw you into the Lord of the Rings. I'm going to give you the hobbits first.
Yep.
I'm going to give you the backstory. That way you can see it all unfold.
I think you're
right.
Just kind of some backstory stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And so start at the garden. That's where and you made the point too, I thought was very interesting, about how they weren't, Adam and Eve weren't off put by the snake talking to them. They just almost like it was normal, like he was already there. They've already had interactions with him. That was very interesting. I never thought of it that way before.
Right.
And the connection of him being the shining one, which I always grew up kind of thinking like the snake was, Satan or the devil or whatever. As a kid, that was kind of the connection I made. But when you said that word, I can't remember the name that was translated to the shining one. Is that what you were referring to? Was the serpent in the garden?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that word serpent is nakash in Hebrew. And the thing is a lot of people, you said you was raised Baptist. I was told, there is only one God, and all the others that's mentioned in the Bible is just wood and stone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, it's plainly said over and over again. God himself calls them gods. You will put no other gods before me. If there were no other gods, why would God say that?
Mm-hmm.
If there was no other gods and they had no power, how come this nation of people that he parted the Red Sea, pulled them, brought the plagues of Egypt, brought them out of Egypt, brought down the walls of Jericho, done all these amazing, miraculous things. How these people kept rebelling and turning away from God? It's because they were seeing the power of these other gods. There's a payoff. There's a reason why people do witchcraft. There was a reason why people sacrifice their children, because these other gods are real. They are lesser. They're not the creator. But they're in the simplest terms, they're the angels that rebelled against God but presented themselves to mankind. And here we are, the lesser, seeing these, angels, otherworldly creatures coming and has all this technology and wisdom and power, and we worship them as gods.
I mean, they are.
And so,
sorry.
No, you go right ahead.
I was just, how we kind of describe it on our show, and I think you'll get this too, is a big G versus little G's. The God, the creator, is the only one that gets capitalized, because you're talking about, him. And then these little G's, these fallen angels, I mean, they're still angels. They're cosmic beings with the power we can't even rationalize. So if they're down here showing you tricks, essentially to them tricks, yeah, it's a hard thing not to, get swayed by when you can see something, tap a stone and water come out, or can, fill the grain houses with just waving a hand. But yeah, so that's kind of like, we agree, at least I agree, that's what I, how I kind of describe it is little G's, which would be the fallen that are down here, messing with stuff, versus the big, big G creator.
And see, that's the thing, because when you look at the pagan religions like Mount Olympus, you have Zeus, the high god, but he's got a bunch of lesser gods that are, sons and brothers, and it's his family. Well, this is a biblical view, and it's how the ancient people seen it. And when you read your Bible, especially when you look at the original languages, that's what it portrays. Deuteronomy 32 verse 8 is the Tower of Babel story. It's a retelling of it. But in there, it doesn't just say that the tongues were divided. It says the people were divided, and that the people was divided amongst the sons of God. So here you have these, sons of God, these, princes and monarch, speaking in language and kingdom language, and they were to rule over the nations. And that's why you have so much wickedness today, because they are still there. They're still over the nations, pulling the strings of the world leaders. In Psalms 82, it says, you are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. You desire to live the eternal life, but ye shall die and fall like any prince. And it says, how long will you rule unjustly? How long will you show partiality to the wicked? And, you talk about Game of Thrones. That's what this is. It's a family that wants to rule, and all the brothers and sisters are fighting amongst themselves for territory, and they're fighting amongst themselves. They're fighting against daddy. They're plotting. I mean, that's what all this stuff is. So that's what this Nakash was. God had his divine council, and this Nakash, this shining one, was a member of that council. He was the priest of this council, and he was plotting to overthrow and deface us. But in his plotting of this, he was thrown down. His garments, he was demoted, and it was given to humanity. So here you have this proud, beautiful angel, perfect in all his ways, it says, tries to trick his younger brother and is demoted, his priestly garments taken. So the thing that was once his prized possession, that showed his pomp and his rank, like you had mentioned, your military status, all those badges and medals on your coat, they're taken away and given to somebody else that hasn't earned them.
Right.
That would infuriate you.
Right.
That would make you hate that person. And that's why Satan hates us so much.
Oh, just like when you wanted that job working for the fisheries.
Let's not talk about this. People listen.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying. They put someone else that shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, but I didn't hate that guy.
No, I know you didn't, but it was the idea of, he's not saying you'd hate that guy, but you rebelled.
But Lucifer hates us.
Well, true. He's even worse.
Okay. Thanks for comparing me to Lucifer.
No. I'm just
great.
saying, you can justify. You
Well,
can
I'm just
justify
going
the
to check
hate-
out for the episode. You guys finish up.
You can justify the hatred. It's just it happens.
You're just taking advantage because my voice is weak.
I guess so. I don't know. I'm just trying to make it relatable. Like, it's real.
Yeah, thank you for relating me to Lucifer. That's
yeah.
great. Appreciate that.
Okay.
But continue. Sorry.
Oh, so now we'll go back to Esau. So in Genesis 25:25, and that's the verse I told you about where he come out covered in hair. He was red, covered in hair head to toe, like a hairy cloak. And it says when he come out that Jacob was holding his heel. So once again, it's pointing back to this Genesis 3. But I theorize, and here's why I do my best to try to say, this is my theory, this is what Scripture says. So I believe, because it says that, there was two nations, two peoples. They were distinct, and they were fighting in the womb. The Genesis 3 curse says that the serpent would have a seed, the woman would have a seed, and they would be at enmity with one another. And remember, one would bruise one's head, the other would bruise its heel. So here we have these twins being born. One is clearly different. And it says one shall be stronger than the other. And when it comes out, Esau's foot is having to push on Jacob's head to exit the womb, and Jacob is holding the heel. So it's a mirror image. I think that Esau was a serpent seed, and that Satan, trying to thwart God's plans, turned the twins in the womb so his seed would be pushing on the head, and the chosen seed of the woman would be holding his seed's heel, trying to invert and flip the script. Because if you look, that's a common theme through history and through the Bible.
Yes.
Satan is a perverter.
Yes.
He perverts and flips everything.
Just like modern day right now, and about every form of major mainstream media we see. Up and down, up is down, black is white, left is right. So can you explain that one more time? Just so you think that Esau and Jake, it was flipped? The seeds were
I mean, trying
to flip the seeds.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. He was trying to, just thwart God's plan because he was, like you said, he was bitter. He was angry. He's in full rebellion. So whatever Daddy wants to do, he wants to mess it up.
make a mockery of it. Yeah.
So, yeah. And so if you move down farther, and one thing too I forgot to mention, with the description of those garments from Ezekiel 28, that matches the description of even his name. Because his name, if it was the Shining One, this garment with the multicolored stones, the gold inlays, and all this stuff, he would that fits the description of his name. He would be the Shining One. But when you skip on down to the famous story that most people, I think, would be familiar with, even if they haven't read the Bible in many years, with Esau, is this trading of the birthright. And when I read this, I was like, this makes absolutely no sense to me. Because here you're the eldest son, and in Jewish tradition, this means that you would get daddy's business. You were set to inherit everything. You were set and pretty. So it's like, your dad's Donald Trump. You're about to inherit the business and millions of dollars, and you come in one day and your little brother's sitting on the couch eating a bag of Doritos. And you're like, hey, bro, let me get some of those Doritos. And he's like, yeah, sure, just sign over the business. And you're like, yeah, sure, take it. I mean, what use is the business to me? When I'm dead, yeah, just take the business. That makes absolutely no sense. And the thing is, just like Genesis 6, that mentions the Nephilim Giants. You get a small little blurb about that. It's like, oh, yeah, the sons of God came down, bred with the daughters of men, created Nephilim Giants, the mighty men of old, and they were before the flood and after the flood, and then move right along. And you're like, whoa, that's a pretty big deal, man. Why are we not going into that a little bit more? Well, it's because, in my opinion, it was already well established in the oral traditions. They already had the book of Enoch that went into that, in great detail. So the author was like, everybody knows about this event. We don't have to beat a dead horse.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is another one of those cases. The author in Genesis was like, we don't have to go into great detail about the trading of this birthright and stuff. There's plenty of oral traditions and scripts out there. Everybody knows. They wasn't thinking about us 2,000-3,000 years later with half of the manuscripts missing, the cultural context of how they lived and all that stuff just completely ignorant to us. So the only thing that it mentions that Esau comes from the field exhausted, trades the birthright, and he's kind of being melodramatic. What use is a birthright to me? And today preachers will just say, oh, it's just because he was a natural man. He was hungry. He didn't care about, spiritual things. He was carnal. Mm-hmm. But when you get into some of these extra biblical books, it fills in the gaps. So Jasher, the book of Jasher in chapter 27, it gives you more detail of this event. And it says that Nimrod, king of Babel, the same as Amphriel, also frequently went with his mighty men. And that word mighty men in Hebrew is Gibborim. And this is the same word used to describe the Nephilim Giants. And a lot of people already, theorize that Nimrod became a Gibborim. So, but it says they went to hunt in the field and to walk about with his men in the cool of the day. And Nimrod was observing Esau all the days, for a jealousy was formed in the heart of Nimrod against Esau. And on a certain day, Esau went to the field to hunt, and he found Nimrod walking in the wilderness with his 2 men. And all the mighty men and his people were with him in the wilderness, but they removed from a distance from him, and went from him in different directions to hunt. And Esau concealed himself from Nimrod, and he lurked for him in the wilderness. And so, and I'll just kind of paraphrase here, but so basically it says Nimrod was jealous of Esau, that he was looking at him with contentment and jealousy all of his days. So these both men were known as mighty men. Both of these men were known to be mighty hunters of the field. And like I mentioned earlier, it's like the Highlander. There can only be one, baby. Mm-hmm. I'm going to show the other one who the real mighty man is. And if Nimrod is this hunter, this mighty hunter, famous for it, how great would it be to have the mighty hunter of the field, Esau's head, on your wall?
Oh, yeah.
And show everybody, I killed the Sasquatch. I killed this hairy beast of a man, and here's his head.
He absorbed his power.
So, yeah. It's like the deer head on the wall today to modern hunters. You want the huge 12-point buck. But in this story, it says that Nimrod is hunting Esau, but Esau hides. And so when he separates from the other men, it's just Nimrod and 2 others. And Esau jumps out from the bush and cuts off Nimrod's head. Mm-hmm. And then he fights the other 2 Gibborim and kills them. And then the army heard the cries at a distance and come running. But Esau, it says, he takes the time to remove the garments from Nimrod. And it says he runs home. And it says when he runs home, he hides the garments in his house and then runs to his father's house. And in there, he sees his brother Jacob preparing this stew. And this ties right into the Genesis book, because it says that Esau came in from the field.
Yeah, tired.
Exhausted.
Yep.
So he probably sustained some life-threatening injuries from fighting not 1, not 2, but 3 giants. And so he was on the run from this army that was coming after him for just killing the king. So I think what we see here, this trading of this birthright, was a move of desperation. He was probably bleeding out, He was scared to death because he was on the run from Nimrod's army, and he was asking his brother to basically nurse his wounds, give him something to eat, and hide him and protect him. Mm-hmm. And so Jacob took advantage. He says, yeah, sure, I'll do this, but trade me the birthright.
Right, yeah.
And that's why he was like, yeah, I don't care. Yeah, take it. Take it, man. I'm dying.
Just save me, yeah.
And that makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, I remember that from... So I grew up in a Brethren church. I remember hearing that. I mean, the last time I heard that I was probably 14, and I'm just like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
You know? But that makes a lot more sense now.
Context.
Context matters.
It does. And it takes someone like Justin doing the research, connecting these dots.
And it ties straight into the Epic of Gilgamesh because it's a mirrored image. You have Gilgamesh, who historians already align with Nimrod.
I mean,
and then you have Enkidu that looks exactly like Esau described. They're both mighty hunters of the field. They have a fight, but in the Sumerian version, which you got to consider the source of any story, it's changed. In that story, Gilgamesh wins, and they become best friends, and they go on all these epic journeys together.
Seems sus.
Yeah.
but I mean, for him to kill three giants, you just kind of like that really puts into perspective how much of a beast he actually was.
Right, yeah.
I mean, three mighty hunters, three men of old.
Well, I mean, not to make that connection right away, but could you see a Bigfoot being able to accomplish that feat?
Matters how big the giant is.
Well, yeah.
Matters about the Bigfoot too.
Yeah, exactly.
There are a lot of things.
There's a lot of variables. But I could see it. There are scenarios where I could see it happening.
A Bigfoot with a sword.
Yeah, that's right.
Jeez.
I know. Imagine finding that in the woods.
I mean, that wouldn't be good.
No.
I've seen a Bigfoot.
And he wields his like.
I don't think I'd ever talk. It took me years to talk about Bigfoot. I seen, but I would have seen him with the sword. I don't think I would have ever talked about it.
Oh man.
You wouldn't live to talk about it.
We need a T-shirt. Yeah, you would not.
That may be the first one I draw.
Especially if he's like, if it's a Bigfoot that looks like the Kurgan from Highlander, and he's like, does samurai chatter. Forgive me, Father, for I am a worm.
Please continue, Justin.
Yeah. So, and some people might be wondering, well, how did Nimrod get these garments? Well, these garments, my opinion, are the garments from the Garden of God.
Wow.
The coverings of the Nakash. And they were passed down through the lineage as a birthright. It was kind of like your grandmother's quilted blanket. You know, it just gets passed down the line. It's a family heirloom, and it's a symbol of authority and power and kingship and priesthood. And the good seed, the good chosen line, was supposed to get this. And it did. It passed down through Enoch, Methuselah, it went to Noah, according to the book of Jasher. And it went through the flood with Noah. But according to the book of Jasher, it says that in Ham's going out, Ham stole the garments. And he gave them to Cush. And Cush concealed them until he had Nimrod. And it says in there that when Nimrod was coming of age, when he was turning 20 years old, becoming a man, that's when Cush gave him the garments. And it said that Nimrod put on the garments. And it said when he put on these garments, he became a mighty man. And through the garments, he was able to prevail over every man, every beast of the field, and conquer the nations. So in the book of Genesis, when it mentions Nimrod, it says, it don't say that he was a Gibborim. It says he became a Gibborim.
Transformed?
So the book of Jasher, yes, they're tying his superiority and his transformation into a Nephilim.
Wow.
To these garments.
With a garment.
Wow.
Now, I've not done nearly as much research in any of this as you have, but as far as cryptid lore and everything like that, do you know how many times that's popped up in cryptids? That a garment has been gifted. Normally it's by the devil, which would make sense with what we're talking about, who originally had these garments.
Yeah.
Whose were they?
And, well, even with the, like, dogmen
That's
digging
what
up
I'm getting
mounds.
to.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of the including the Beast of Jebediah, killed thousands of people, was a belt given to him by Lucifer. And when he would put on the belt, that's when he would become the Beast of Jebediah. When he would take off the belt, he's back to being a man.
It's kind of like the movie The Mask.
Yeah, with Loki's mask and all that. You know,
puts it on, transforms in this.
I've heard it with everything, more modern times. With hats, belts have been a big one. Cloaks have been a big one, where you become there's one in Native, and I don't want to misquote it. There's something with Native American lore too. Well, I mean, we talked about skinwalkers and stuff like that. They need the pelts of these things.
The beasts, yes.
To become the beast. So that's just interesting. We're talking 3,000 years of follow through of the same things happening. But I just wanted to say that, Justin, that's very fascinating.
I'm glad you did. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me. I'd like to know more.
We can talk about it later because a lot of times it does deal with Lucifer, and it's almost like a genie in the lamp type thing, to where the people that are getting the power, there's always consequences, right? You're borrowing something from Lucifer. There's never anything. Am I not muted?
No. Just you keep drifting away.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
What are they saying? No. So they're borrowing something from Lucifer. So there's these unintended consequences. Like, depending on which story, the Beast of Jebediah, you hear at the end that he begged to be shot because, like, the more that he wore the belt, the more the beast took over. And when he was caught because he couldn't be killed when he was wearing the belt. But he took off the belt, and the army or the group had cornered him. He's like, "You got to kill me now, because I'm going to put the belt back on in a second."
Yeah.
Like, you have to. And then the other is that, like, they had put enough lead into this beast that the belt had fallen off, and he turned back into a man, and then they murdered him. But I'm trying to think. There was another cloak, I think, with the Owl Man of Kentwall and stuff like that, with the devil becoming beasts, becoming these great, big, huge things after being gifted a garment. So it's really fascinating to me, because I've never really put that together with the Bible and how much follow through there is. You're talking thousands of years later, and the same thing's still happening.
Tale as old as time.
A tale as old of time.
Yeah, and it goes back to the serpent seed, because this is Satan bestowing the symbol of authority, like a signet ring or something, and manipulating the DNA, and now it's his child, basically. And when you go back to the Greeks, when I started doing this study on these garments, are you guys familiar with Jason and the Argonauts and the Golden Fleece? That's a mirrored image of this story.
Yeah.
Yeah. In that story, you have a man and a woman, and Zeus commanded that they be sacrificed to him. Well, Athena shows up and sends them a golden ram, and it can fly, and she tells them to get on the ram, and that it would fly them to safety. Well, during this flight, the woman falls, okay, and then they land in the midst of the garden of Ares. And when the man gets off, Athena shows up and says, "Sacrifice the ram, and that will appease Zeus, and that will be your substitute, because the woman's already died. So the ram will be your substitute." So he sacrifices the ram, then he removes the ram's coverings, he cuts off the fur, the golden fleece of this ram, and then hangs it on a tree in the midst of the garden of Ares, and it is guarded by a great serpent.
Wow.
And it is the symbol of authority and kingship. And when you go to the Bible, and you have Abraham, his firstborn son, Isaac, well, technically his second-born son, but his with Sarah, God tells him to sacrifice the child. So he goes up, makes a funeral pyre, gets ready to kill him. Then the last minute, the angel of the Lord tells him to stop. And what happens? God provides a ram in the thicket as a substitute for the sacrifice.
Wow.
I mean, that's a lot. So the ram in the garden of Ares, is that a good thing that was there?
Yeah, it's a substitute.
Right. Is that a good thing it was a substitute?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, because he didn't have to die then.
Right, yeah. Okay. I didn't know if he was making a deal with...
No, he's saying that how it mimics this. It's the same story.
Yeah, right.
So it's a good thing the ram was there. Otherwise, he would have to die.
Kill, or the baby.
But it was a gift as a substitute, so he wouldn't have to. Well, he wouldn't have to sacrifice his life in the grave, and then he wouldn't have to sacrifice his son.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow, same story.
Keep going.
Yeah. And so, but I think we see these garments in the 66 book canon. It's just looked over. Mm-hmm. And one of those instances is, if we remember, this is just like the birthrights, another misinterpreted story. Noah, when he gets off the boat, it says that he plants a vineyard, starts drinking and getting drunk and passing out. And it says that he passes out, and his son Ham uncovers his father's nakedness, and he gets cursed. And when I heard that story, I was like, man, that's messed up. I mean, if I was at school and my dad's a drunk and, gets drunk and passes out naked, and I walk in and see him, that's not my fault. That's his fault.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the cursing is, that he would be a servant to his brothers, and cursed be Cain. And I was like, dude, that's harsh. Well, when you get the ancient mindset and the culture and the terminology, you go to Leviticus chapter 17. It says in there outright, to sleep with thy father's wife is to uncover thy father's nakedness.
Oh.
And this was an act of rebellion in the ancient world. If you look in the Bible, Reuben did the same thing. And if you look, Absalom, David's son, did the same thing. He run David off from the kingdom, and the first thing he did, it said he pitched a tent on the house of David and went into all of his concubines in the sight of all of Israel. So this was a way of flexing on the old man back today, and just a hostile rebellion takeover of the house. You're asserting your dominance. So whether Ham's mother was a willing participant or she was raped, but either way, Ham slept with his mother. And this is where my opinion gets slid in, my creative thinking here. He tried to take over the family. He goes outside and then tells his brothers. He says, Dad's a drunk. All he does is drink and pass out. He's unfit to rule. I have just did this deed. You two go do the same. He can't take on all three of us. It's our time to rule. And when you go back to the biblical narrative, they refuse. And it says that they take a garment, place on their backs, walk backwards, and they cover their father's nakedness. Well, when you go to the Hebrew, it doesn't say a garment. It has a definite article assigned to it. It says they took the garment. And remember, this garment is a symbol of authority and priesthood. So if he was trying to rebel and take over the family, they took the symbol of authority
And put it back on Dad.
and covered, yes. And then, so that also makes sense with the cursing, because it's the exact opposite of what Ham was trying to do. Ham was trying to have everyone serve him. No, cursed is he. He would be a servant to his brothers. But then it says, cursed be Canaan. Now, if you follow the chronology, Canaan wasn't born yet. Canaan was Ham's firstborn son. So what I think happened, when it says Noah awoke from his wine, a lot of people just assume that's a day. I mean, it don't say that. It could be several months down the road, like when he decides to start going to the AA meetings, and give it up. So what I think, with the context of the story, is several months passes, probably 8 to 9, and then he realizes his wife's pregnant. and that it's not his. Mm-hmm. And they're going to name it Canaan. Mm-hmm. So he says, "Cursed be Canaan."
The son of Ham.
Yes.
I'm glad, because that was another one I've heard growing up, and I'm like, why would they do that to their to
Grandson
or to their son? You know, why would they curse him to serve his brothers?
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
But that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
The punishment fits the crime a little bit more now.
Yeah. You need the context.
Because I think I just talked about this year. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like, literally, I'm 29. I didn't know the context behind it. No. So, you have me spinning. I'm still trying to connect to Bigfoot.
Well, I mean...
Okay.
It's coming.
I know it's coming, but that's why I'm trying to put pieces together in my head.
Yeah.
And he's blowing my mind with all this stuff. And it's just like...
Ooh, now you're like in my shoes right now. Yeah.
So keep going. I'm excited.
Okay. So I just wanted to lay that groundwork, for those garments. And so I've already said I think, Esau was a serpent seed. Where the garments come from, how they passed down the line, and that was the birthright trading. And then we see the beginning of Canaan is an incestuous act, and it's cursed from the beginning. And that's why God told his people, you are not to take wives from the Canaanites, because it is a tainted bloodline. It's an incestuous, evil line that's been cursed from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And if you follow Gary Wayne and other scholars, they've done deep dives on these lineages and shows all of the Nephilim giant clans in the Bible. And so when we come back to Esau, he's done, verbally agreed to trade the birthright, and Isaac is getting close to death, and Isaac favored Esau because he was the manly man. He was a big guy, he was a warlike guy, he was, the mighty hunter of the field, he was a man's man. So he calls Esau into his tent, and he says, my life's, drawing close to an end. I want a taste of your meal one last time of your game. Go out and hunt me a meal, prepare me another meal, and I will bestow the blessings upon you, my son. Well, Rebekah is outside the tent and hears this. So when Esau leaves to go hunting, she goes to Jacob and she says, your father's about to give Esau the blessings. Go grab a kid goat, kill it, and bring it to me. I will prepare a delicious meal. Because Isaac was blind in his older age. So she says, and you'll take this meal to your father and pretend to be your brother and steal the blessings. And he freaks out. He's like, no, mother, I'm a smooth man. Once again, going back to this, Esau being this hairy Sasquatch man. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say, oh, well, that's hyperbole, or that's poetic language. Well, this right here puts that to bed. He says, no, I'm a smooth man, mother, and what if he finds out and curses me instead? And she says, if he curses you, allow the curse to fall upon me, just do as I say. So he takes the goat, he kills it, brings the meat and everything to his mother. She prepares the meal, but then she takes the fur of the goat and covers him in it. And then it says she goes to Esau's house and grabs a garment and places it on Jacob. And then he goes in, and it says that Isaac reaches out to touch. He says, come closer, let me feel you, my son. And he feels the goat fur. And if you've ever felt of a goat fur, I mean, it's coarse, it's thick, it's oily.
It's not
This
great.
is not poetic language.
Oh, it's not great.
He was that hairy. This was literal. And then he even makes a comment. He says, you even smell of the field, my son. Mm-hmm. And you hear about Sasquatch and all these phantom, rank smells. So there's another Bigfoot correlation. And he eats the food, he blesses Jacob, and he leaves. Well, shortly after, Esau shows up. He says, arise, my father, and eat, and give me my blessing. And he says, who is this? He says, it's your son, Esau. He said, I've already ate your game. I've already gave you your blessing. And Esau's like, no, you haven't, Father. And then they realized the fix was in. And it says Esau begins to cry and weep. Please, Father, I'm the eldest. Give me the blessing. And he says, son, what's done is done. And he's like, well, do you have a lesser blessing? You know, can you give me this, that, or that? He's like, no, I've given everything to your brother, and I can't undo it. And it says that he cries, and he's just screaming in anger, and he vows to kill his brother. So Rebekah hears this and sends Jacob away. And when you go into the Jewish lore, it says in there that that he hated him so much that he plotted to kill him, and he said to his sons that he would bite the life out of Jacob and suck his blood dry.
Wow.
That he would just rip his throat out and suck his blood dry. So it speaks to his bestiality, his ferociousness. And when you go to the historian Flavius Josephus, when he talks about the struggle between these two brothers, he chooses a word, and he chooses it very carefully, I think, because he was a smart man, and he was using this law of first mention, because he says there was enmity between Esau and Jacob, pointing back to this seed war in the Satan-serpent seed.
All the way at the beginning.
Yes. And here's where it gets really blurry for you guys, and I think this will be the most fascinating part for you guys. Once this happens, Esau is bitter, just like the Nakash, and goes into full rebellion. He takes 3 wives. 2 of them, he goes to the Canaanites. You know, it's from Ham, incestuous, evil lineage that was cursed, and they were commanded not to do so. So he takes 2 of them. And when you look in the lineages of the Bible, those were daughters of Horite clans, and they were known giant clans. And one of the father-in-laws, his name was Seir, and his people they were giant clans. They dwelt in the wilderness near the base of Mount Seir. Well, in Hebrew, that word Seir means hairy. So it's drawing back to this hairy Nephilim giants. And then he takes his 3rd wife. Well, for his 3rd wife, he goes to Ishmael. And those that are not familiar, Ishmael was Isaac's older brother, because Abraham was promised a child. Sarah, in her old age, thought she couldn't give him one, so she gives him her handmaiden, and that produces Ishmael. He's the firstborn. Well, then later Sarah miraculously conceives Isaac. Well, Sarah, in her jealousy, commands that Ishmael and his mother be kicked out into the wilderness. So here's Esau, the eldest, disinherited, goes to his uncle, who is the eldest and disinherited, and they married and formed a union. So you can imagine the family feud, the hatred that was sown. So once again, this seed war. And then when you go back to the Canaanite clans, so here you have this hairy quote-unquote man, this Sasquatch, interbreeding with giants in the land of Seir, which means hairy, has a very high likelihood to throw some strange pups, to say the least.
Yeah.
And one of those is the clan called the Amalekites. And the Amalekites, even their name, means blood lickers.
Wow. That's not good.
Yeah. And so Esau, his nephew, was the mighty Amalek, the Nephilim giant, known to be a sorcerer and vampiristic, drunk the blood. And this is the very first people group that God's chosen people had encounters with when they left Egypt and went into the wilderness wanderings. They went into the land of Seir. And it says that they picked them off like ghosts. As they were walking through, the stragglers, the old and the children that were in the back, they took them out from behind.
Yeah.
They, like vultures. And said that when they actually fought, now this is the famous battle where Moses has to hold the staff up, the staff of Moses, and it says as long as he held the staff over his head, the Israelites prevailed. But when he got tired and his arms lowered, the Amalekites started winning. So this shows that it took supernatural aid to beat this clan. And it's because when you look through the histories, you look through Josephus, you look through the writings of Rashi, they say these people were sorcerers. They were necromancers. And that's why I think when you look at the books of the wanderings, nobody makes up a rule or tells you not to do something unless somebody's doing it or breaking that rule. So what do you have there? You have, do not seek necromancers or sorcerers. Do not drink the blood. The life force is in the blood. Do not pass your children through the fires of Molech. In the book of Isaiah, it talks about in the desolate deserts, in the destroyed towns, that the satyrs will dance. In the original language, in the Septuagint, in the English, I think it says the wild beasts or something will dance. But in the original language, it refers to satyrs, hairy beast men, goat men.
Yeah.
And then, also it says in those books, no longer will you sacrifice to hairy goat demons. You have the Day of Atonement. They cast all their sins on what? The Azazel goat. I think that they were seeing these Amalekite races, these Sasquatch-looking, hairy, giant, hybrid beings, and they were sacrificing their children to Molech. They were practicing sorcery and necromancy. They were doing these rituals and dancing around the fire and doing all these things. And God's people were starting to mimic them. And that's why these laws and rules come out. And there's common themes, because when you look through history, it all stems from these Sasquatch, hairy, Nephilim giants that done all this sorcery type stuff. Rashi, the guy I mentioned earlier, he was a French medieval rabbi and wrote commentaries and wrote a lot of stuff. In his writings, he says that when they were attacking these clans and clearing out the Holy Land, every single tribe that was mentioned were Nephilim giant clans. And it says, kill every man, woman, child, and animal. Don't even take the animals. And Rashi says because they were known sorcerers. They were shapeshifters. And they would change into these animals to avoid capture.
And that's why the flood happens.
Yeah.
Well, this is
This
after the flood.
flood.
They came back.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a whole lot there to unpack.
So the ghost, behaviors. I mean, how many times do we hear that described with Sasquatch?
Oh, with Sasquatch, yeah.
Floating in, grabbing. The missing 401 angle with Sasquatch.
Oh,
Seriously.
gosh, yeah.
The kids that go missing, what happens?
Yeah.
They get grabbed.
Out of thin air.
But between adults.
Yeah. I just had 1 second you blink.
And they're gone.
Yeah.
And how much magic, behaviors have we heard from some Sasquatch reportings?
Paranormal, that metaphysical Sasquatch.
Yeah. But what he's describing would be, this magic,
Right.
whether necromancer or whatever. So
I did have a question though, with going back to Jacob and Isaac, where him and his mother deceived basically Isaac, to bestow his blessing. My first question is what blessing is that exactly that he's getting? And then, but why did he have to deceive him, or why was it so important for him to have it if the rightful person was Esau? Because is that
Wasn't it because his brother promised it to him?
is that just what it was?
Well, he'll tell us in a second.
Okay, yeah.
That's-
Well, there was a verbal agreement.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, it was a desperation. Just whatever. If I
if you're
live through
bleeding
this,
out, you'll agree to whatever.
Hell, I ain't giving you the birthright. If I live through this,
Yeah, I'm keeping
bigger
it.
than you. I'm stronger than you. You gonna take it from me?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And he did.
And so this blessing and this thing was kind of like a stamp at the lawyer's office. It was the finalization of it.
Like handing
And
over the family
Rebecca,
company.
remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rebecca, remember, she knew the inherent evil of Esau. And she knew, he was not of their seed. Something was different. He was a huge, hairy man that was evil and hunted people and done all these wicked things. And you got to remember, too, at her conception, the angel of the Lord came to her and warned her and told her who the chosen seed was. So she was doing everything in her power to make sure that the will of God was taking place.
So I got a question, because I know we're going to get emails about it. Does that make then? So I guess I got two. It's a twofold question. So Esau, their descendants would be the Bigfoot, in your thinking. Do they spread out? Is there a bunch of them now? I guess is my first question. And my second question is, does that make them inherently evil, or can they be on both sides of that, or I in your own opinion?
Yeah, I used to be like, well, no, they're demon offspring, serpent seed. But then you have Jesus in the Bible that mentions, you are your father of the devil. And, and those people weren't hairy Sasquatches.
Right.
And it's like God was talking to them like they had the choice. So I think free will and your actions come into play. But it's like a genetic anomaly, and it can skip generations. And the theory of entropy shows nothing gets better over time. It disintegrates and gets worse. And then you have these tribes of these hairy Sasquatch giant people taking regular human wives, and they're interbreeding, and they're diluting that bloodline. And when you look through science, there's this thing, like you hear of the wolf man, the bearded lady.
Yeah.
This is a real thing, and it's called hypertrichosis. That's the scientific term. But a lot of people don't know, but if you'll Google search, I found this on Wikipedia when I was researching this book. It says that we all are covered in hair in the womb. But it's fine hair. It's called lagono or something like that. And some people's is thicker than others. Some people's got dark, black. Some's got red. It's all, DNA and genes. But at a certain point, your genetic coding tells your body to shed that hair. And those people that you hear of with the Wolfman syndrome and the bearded ladies and all this stuff, that's a genetic defect. And their body doesn't tell them to shed it. Could this be like a Nephilim DNA strand from this Esau line that skips generations and has degenerated over time? I don't know. There's correlations.
Is there any analysts for Mr. E, Justin? Is there any animal in nature that you know of that has hair in the womb before it's born?
All mammals.
All mammals do.
Yeah.
Any that shed it, I guess.
Trait. Yeah.
Any that shed it before it's born, I guess, similar to us.
You look at naked mole rats and like animals that have adapted to be hairless. They still have hair. It's like if you watch
or like we do.
Yeah. Whales. Whales, you don't see big hairy whales, but they are mammals. They have little mustaches. They have facial hair.
Are they hairy in the womb?
Yeah, they have little hairs all over them.
Okay.
And then they shed them because that's negative. They're less hydrodynamic.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so that does. Yeah, most of those animals are like us. Whether you believe we're prime, whatever, don't you matter. we're pretty much, even though the hair we have on our bodies is relatively fine
Right.
compared to other animals. So to keep that is very interesting. And I'm glad how you said it is like, so we talk about that with Bigfoot a lot. I mean, the interbreeding, pretty much any culture that has stories of Bigfoot a lot of them talk about this interbreeding thing.
Yeah.
And there's good Bigfoot, there's bad Bigfoot, there's medium Bigfoot, So I guess that has been my big pushback for people that have said, maybe in less as fine words, these Bigfoots are from the Nephilim or and demons and, that's their bloodline, is that, well, people talk about good Bigfoot. The kid, I don't know if you ever heard the story about the little boy that was lost, that was saved by a Bigfoot.
By bear.
Yeah, by bear. He kept saying the bear took care of me.
Yeah.
3 days, and then when the bear heard Dad was back, he put him in the parking lot. And
did we talk about? I think it was with Joel. I think the Nephilim, but being in the Bible about how, even they can be forgiven. Or
that's Joel's idea. Yes.
Even everything can seek forgiveness.
But you're not
and
tied to your father.
Right.
Your father's sins. You're not tied.
Right.
So that's I guess was my before tonight's conversation was my big pushback against that idea. Is that because I guess the few people I've heard kind of describe that, a lot of them are like big. Then that would make Bigfoot all evil, right?
Right. Yeah.
As they're thinking, but the way you're describing it, no, they don't have to be.
Because if they have, even if they have the evil,
And it ties into the wild man.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The wild man stories, because I have a chapter in the book talking about that, especially like in Britain and all throughout the world, really. You have these stories of these wild men, these huge hairy men and women. Some people refer to them as feral people, but the common themes are all there for this Sasquatch character. And what do? They raid the towns in the middle of the night, and they're always after food, resources, and women, and they abduct them and rape them, and they come back, and they have all kinds of stories of people giving birth to these hairy beasts. And you got to think of the people of that time. They lived in these villages. Everybody had a job. Number one thing on their mind was survival.
Right.
You had a tanner, you had a farmer, you had an ironsmith. So if you,
The good old days.
like the Eskimos, if you're born, with a deformity, they take you out and kill you. Once you get too old for the hunt, they take you out and they kill you. You have no, contributing factors to the community.
Not the
You're
good
a
old
drag.
days.
They get rid of you.
Right.
I do have
So
to say
back
though,
in the day,
Inuit.
Oh.
We have friends. Eskimo's not a great word for them,
okay.
but Inuit. But go on. Sorry, it just
anyway.
we know people up there.
Yeah, I'm ignorant to the lingo. No offense meant.
Right.
They did take offense
So-
to it. They would email me if I didn't say something.
Okay. Well, see, I just recently talked with a cop that lived in Alaska for 20 years.
Yeah.
And he referred to them as Eskimo, and then he even made a point saying, "I lived with him for 20 years. That's what we call them. That it's not
That
an
is-
offensive term.
that
So I
pl-
guess it's just where you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It does.
I mean, I believe him, but they just yeah. But continue. Sorry.
Yeah, but in those stories though, and think about the time. So whether it was a genetic defect or it was a girl raped by one of these Sasquatch things, wild men, if you give birth to this hairy looking beast of a kid, first thing, this is a demon seed.
Yeah.
They'd kill it. Or there's stories of them taking it to the woods and leaving it for wild animals to eat. Well, so if you had a mental illness, if you had born hairy looking weird, if you was a rapist, a murderer, a thief, a liar, any of these things, you were outcast, you were shunned to live in the wilderness. Well, people are the same. Look at the homeless community today. They form communities. They band together for survival. So I proposed the idea. So you have all these people thrown out trying to live and trying to survive. Well, science has now proven in certain conditions with anorexia and the cold, people, their bodies are made to survive. So you don't have this layer of fat to keep you warm and you're starving. Your DNA, I don't know how you word it, but basically your body turns on this switch and you start growing this thick hair all over your body to keep yourself warm. It's a survival mechanism, and science has proven
the
this.
word.
So imagine.
Do I?
Do you?
Yeah, you know the word.
I'm blanking.
It'd be activating a phenotype.
Phenotype. Gotcha.
Yes. So you have these people out in the woods, and they start growing hair. They start interbreeding with each other. They start throwing more hairy people. Mm-hmm. And then the children that were like this left in the woods, if these people found them, they'd take them, take care of them, and raise them
As their own.
So I think that that's kind of where you get a lot of these wild man stories from.
Yeah.
But the pushback that I receive with my idea with Esau is people talk about the woo. They're like, no, Esau was, a human. When we hear these stories, it's mind speak. It's coming through portals. There's UFOs involved. And I say, well, if this was from the Nephilim line, according to the book of Enoch, the ones wiped out in the flood, it says that their bodies or their spirits were not from earth or heaven, so therefore their bodies or their spirits roam as demons, and they torment mankind. This could easily account for the evil ones you hear about, and how they phase in and out of reality, do the mind speak.
Powers,
because if these are, if they're disembodied Nephilim, wouldn't they want to choose a form that they were familiar with that commanded power back in the pre-flood world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very sorry. Go ahead.
I really like that idea. I mean, it's logical. I always like things that, you can, or not tangible, but, add up at least. But going back to like the battle of the seeds and stuff like that, I just had the thought of, how Esau was deceived, basically, or tricked by his brother, and then, which really set him into a frenzy to, do the evil deeds he did, or, to, I guess, succumb to, the evilness of like the devil, or, temptation, doing your bad thoughts, not acting, what is right, and, what God would intend, doing what's right. And, even that act of deception by, Jacob, it's kind of like the same thing. It's not an honest thing to do. He did, and so like he did one thing. It's almost like it was a trick set up by, the devil that, wanted to deceive the other, just like modern times, how you got, one supposed good side, but they're still doing their tricks to deceive, regular everyday people. And then you got the other side doing the same thing to lead people down a path that, on the outside looking in is the good thing, and they get tricked, propaganda and things like that.
Well, it's a chess match between God and Satan. Satan tried to make a move on the board while, God had his back turned. And then when Satan turned around, he done his switch with Jacob and Rebecca.
And I just had the thought, though, it's within the individual, that battle is going on within the battle of the seeds is going on within each individual person, and they have the choice, to see the truth, not be deceived and take the bait, or, take the carrot in front of you. It's a battle within all of us. That's just kind of how I view it, just from hearing everything. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense at all. Mm-hmm. So are we all have the battle of, Esau within us. Are we, facing our primal instincts that, may want to, take people that's easier for us, or to do the right thing, and maybe which, that's usually the harder path and not just given to you. You have to work for it and things like that.
Yep, totally agree.
Bigfoot and life lessons.
Yeah, it all overlaps.
It's very fascinating. I mean, so once again, losing my voice, so I don't have the breath to do this, but I'm very fascinated with this idea. I still don't know where I fall, but I think you put probably the best argument out there for me with this line of it. Like I said, I've heard a couple other people, but it falls very short. But connecting it to the Giants, to Esau, to all to all of this, the amount of research you've done into it, I cannot wait for the book to come out. I'll tell you that much. Because we'll be probably doing an episode
Absolutely,
on it. Yeah, I can already see. I got a bunch of books over there that have little ear tags in them just for this kind of stuff. Because I want to go back and explore a lot of it. but I don't know. Where do you fall on it, Jay?
I mean, I really like the idea of connecting, with the Sumerian stuff with Enki, and what was Enki's brother's name? I cannot remember, but anyways, it's very similar to Jacob and Esau, and just the hairy man connection with Bigfoot, like because we talked about too
the hairy man.
that when we talk Bigfoot, there's so many different kinds of what is Bigfoot. Yeah, and this could just be an explanation for one of those things.
So, Justin, what do you think? Do you think all Bigfoot are this thing, or are these the descendants of Esau, or do you think that's just? So we talk about it on the show a lot. We think there's about 3 different things that we're calling Bigfoot at any given time,
and this could be 4.
I mean, I know. I think it does probably fit one of our boxes.
Right?
I really do.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Do you personally believe that this is all the Bigfoot, or do you think this is some of the Bigfoot? What do you think?
Well, like I'd said to you before, I was never a huge Bigfoot enthusiast, and I've not really taken a really extreme deep dive on that, secular side of it. I've just looked at the ancient texts and some of the legends, and with the Bible, and kind of sewn them together like that. But my viewpoint was, just being honest, I don't know. It's just conjecture. But my ideas, as I've been reading this, is going back to like kinds and likes. You may have a dog, but a dog has thousands and thousands of kinds, and I kind of see this hairy man, this Sasquatch, as kind of like that. It's a dog. Here's a set or a kind, but you have all kinds of various branches going off. So might be, feral people, might be a branch that stemmed off of that. You hear about the urine, the Yeti, just all these different ones, and you got all these different characteristics. I think that it's a good possibility that that Esau was a kind, and all these branched out, because there's 2 other hairy wild men in the Bible that people look over all the time. Nebuchadnezzar II. When you read the story of that, he was cursed by God, and he went into the wilderness. And it said that his hair grew long, like a beast of the field, and that he ate grass, and his nails grew long, and all these things. To me, that sounds very similar, like the Sasquatch. And then Cain gets his marking. Okay, and it's once again same scenario. You get this little blurb about it, and then boom, it moves on. Well, when you go into these writings of Rashi, and you go into the extra biblical books and the Targums, it says that his marking was he was covered in hair from head to toe, like a beast of the field, and that he was even given a horn. And that's why he was so afraid of being killed, because he looked like a beast. And when you follow the Midrash, it says that Lamech mistakes Cain for a beast of the field and kills him, and that he was going blind in his old age, and his younger son helped him hunt, and his son told him to shoot, and then when they got up close, they realized who it was, and in his anger kills his son for the mistake. And then in the book of Genesis, it says, just out of nowhere, Lamech comes home distraught and says, if Cain was cursed times 7, mine will be times 70. I just killed a man and a youth in my anger. And that's how they tie that together. They say that he had just came back from mistakenly killing Cain. And that guy Rashi says that a lot of people mistake a lot of people think that the cursing of Cain was, no, anybody that kills you is going to be cursed times 7. Well, Rashi says no, that he believes that God was saying that where Cain killed his brother Abel, that the vengeance from Abel's blood and killing will be taken out in the 7th generation. Because when you count, Lamech was the 7th from Cain.
It all adds up. The numbers never lie. I have a question.
Oh, dude, can I do a screen share on this thing here? I want to show you something.
I don't know if you
I
can
found this
from your
today.
side.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll email it to you. But,
Okay.
And you have this on the ceiling of the 16th chapel. Somebody had said, "Oh, there's a Bigfoot in the ceiling of the 16th chapel," and they sent me this video. A buddy of mine, and you see it. It's like you have the 16th chapel, and there's this cave, and inside, when you zoom in, there's a Sasquatch there.
Wow.
I
And
can't wait
then
to see
beside
this.
of him is another hairy man, but with one horn.
Okay, there you
And I
go.
was like, that is Esau and Cain,
Yeah.
man.
Wow.
That's the serpent seed.
The two Sasquatch. I can't wait to see that. You'll have to send that to us after this.
I had a question though for just an overview of kind of everything when you're researching this stuff. How do you like decipher through, because there's so many different Bibles and so many different versions of things. How do you go through, all the different ones and kind of come up with your ideas or conclusions? Just with there being so many differences out there.
Yeah. Logos Bible software. If you guys are into scripture, I cannot brag enough about that software. I can pull up every single translation in tabs and compare verse by verse. They also have interlinears. So I can, if I'm in the New Testament, I can have the English translation of whatever one I choose, and then below it is the original language, the Hebrew. Mm-hmm. And you could highlight, do word searches, definitions, how many times that word is used. It's all hyperlinked, and you can get all different types of biblical study books and have it in a digital library, and it's all hyperlinked. That's the most amazing piece of software
That sounds like
that
it.
I've
Yeah.
ever encountered. I love it.
It's called Logos.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll try to find a link and put it in the description too.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
It sounds very like a good piece of software.
Because just trying to, I can only imagine it's like going through, just like scouring the internet for information, but with all the different scriptures
Well, like
and
he was even talking
religions,
about the translations. The translations.
Yeah,
Finding the correct word that it in the context it was meant.
right. Yeah, it's like when we search for something on Google, it's the top results come up, but those aren't the answers you're really seeking for. You go to page 12 and you find what you really want.
Like one of the translations of the Bible had mermaids in it for just a small piece of time because it was a mistranslation of what I can't even remember which monks it was talking about. But they ate monks ate fish and they turned into mermonks and they turned into mermaids.
Yeah,
Just from languages.
I mean, the unicorn in the King James Version, that was actually the Hebrew word was for an aurochs. And that you have all these ancient petroglyphs and depictions of this bull. That's what it was. It was depicting an aurochs, and these things were huge. They were mammoth bulls, and they were I think 6 or 6.5 foot at the shoulder. They were huge.
this is pretty awesome stuff.
Yeah, very different than a unicorn.
I'm looking.
Traditionally.
I looked up the Sistine Chapel thing. That's pretty awesome
I
too.
can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up here, Justin, please go through again. Tell them where they can find all your stuff. Your book's getting ready. I mean, your book's about ready to come out, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it published now.
So tell everybody where they find your stuff, and I'll put the links in below.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I enjoyed the conversation, and can't wait to dive in with you again and hear some of these common themes with these garments and belts and stuff associated.
Yeah.
Because I love gathering the puzzle pieces, man. I find that stuff fascinating because, and that's what I say with the podcast. The podcast is called the Prometheus Lens Podcast, and I say that I've kind of coined it the hero's journey.
There we
You
go.
have to go into the unknown.
Yeah.
You have to slay the dragon. You have to rescue the damsel. And then you come out on the other end as a hero. And you take that boon that you acquired from your journey and you share it with the world. And that's what this is all about, man, because nobody has it all figured out. But everybody's got pieces. Mm-hmm. So let's go. Let's have some intelligent conversations, and let's ask some good intelligent questions and gather those pieces of that puzzle and put them together so we can form a better holistic view. And that's the whole purpose of this show. I begin every show and I tell everybody, welcome to the hero's journey. So I hope you guys decide to come over and check it out. Like I said, it's everything from Jesus to aliens to ancient history, lost civilizations, all that stuff filtered through a biblical lens. But the website's PrometheusLensPodcast.com. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you can consume content. And the same thing with the socials. I'm on all the social medias. Just search up Prometheus Lens Podcast, and hope to see you guys there.
That's amazing.
Now, everybody, seriously, I'm super excited.
Yeah.
My only problem with today's episode is I couldn't conversate as well as I wanted to.
Oh, I know. Well, I think
it's
we're going to
hurting
have
me.
him back on.
It's physically hurting me.
Yeah. I know you've got lots to you could go on about.
Yeah. This could be a 4-hour episode pretty easy.
Oh, yeah.
But we have a tradition here, Justin, how we end it is I'll count down from 3. At the end of that, we're all going to scream bye, and the outro will play. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, thank you for listening to Cryptids of the Corn podcast. Remember, the best way to support the show is share it with a friend. But if you are craving more of the J clones
And more from Mr. E.
there's always extra content on Patreon.
And our paid member space on cryptidsofthecorn.com.
We'll catch you next time with more exciting, fun, and informative information. Bye.